Hey, it's Dudley Rutherford, Senior Pastor, Shepherd Church. Thank you for joining us on today's episode called Godly Goosebumps. This is a podcast that we do here at the church where we tell stories, and these stories are powerful. A lot of times they're stories that only God can design. As you read the storyline, you can see God interwoven throughout the details of the story. And our hope and our prayer is that as you hear these stories, and you see God moving in different people's lives, that you reach the conclusion that God is alive, that He's still on the throne. Of course, one of the great things about the Scriptures and being a Christian in the Bible and eternity, as we think about salvation, is the fact that Jesus, not only did He die on that cross, and not only was He buried, but what happened on that third day? That He resurrected. And no matter what happens in our life, because of the resurrection, we know that one day we're going to get to go to heaven. And that as we talked about last Easter here at Shepherd, you should want that story to be true. If you doubt that story, which I understand if you do, there should be something inside your heart that makes you want to believe that story. Because without the resurrection, what hope do we have? And I think about that day where Jesus died on that cross and He was buried. And the devil was happy, of course, and the devil was probably rubbing his hands because he thought he had won. And it was a dark, dark day because it looked like it was the end of the Messiah, end of Jesus, and that there would be no hope for any of us. But on that third day when Jesus resurrected, at that moment, all of us, we all received hope that no matter what happens in this life, it doesn't matter what it is. We know that ultimately down life's road, when that moment comes where we transition from this life to the next, if we're a believer, if we're in Jesus, we know that we're going to get to go to heaven. And if you're listening to this, I just want you to say, thank you, Jesus. Just say, thank you, Jesus. Jesus said in John 11:25, He said, I am the resurrection and the life. He that believes in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live. I want you to think about that verse. He said, I am the resurrection, and He was the resurrection. He was the one that conquered the grave. But He said, I'm the resurrection and the life, because we have life after the resurrection. Death is not the end. You have life after death because of the resurrection. And He said, he that believes in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live. So you're here today as a mortal man, worried about the cares of this life. Yet Jesus says, if you believe in Him, no matter what happens to you in this life, no matter how dead you feel on the inside, and no matter if you die physically today, tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, yet shall he live. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, you ought to be doing somersaults thinking about that verse. It was Dr. James Dobson, many of you know him. He related a story of an elderly woman by the name of Stella Thornhope. I love her last name, Thornhope. Just putting those two words together, it's amazing. Stella Thornhope, I want you to get her name. She was struggling with her very first Christmas alone because her husband had died just a few months prior through a slow developing cancer. And I don't know if you know anyone who's lost a loved one. Christmas can be a tough time of the year. That first Christmas without your loved one is one of the most difficult times ever. And that's exactly what Stella was going through. Several days before Christmas, she was almost snowed in by a brutal weather system. She felt terribly, and she decided that she was not going to even decorate her house for Christmas. She just, I'm not even going to put the tree up, not going to put the lights up, no decorations. She's depressed already. Her husband's gone. And so she's not going to decorate the house. But late that afternoon, the doorbell rings, and there was this delivery boy with a box. And he said, Mr. Thornhope? He said, Mrs. Thornhope? She nodded. He said, would you sign here? And she invited him to step inside and close the door to get away from the cold. She signed the paper and she said, what's in the box? And the young man laughed and opened up the flap. And inside this box Are you ready for this? It was a puppy, a little puppy, a golden lab retriever. And, those dogs are cute when they're little. When they get big, they're still good looking. But when they're little, when they're puppies, they're the cutest dog on the planet. The delivery boy picked up this squirming little puppy and explained, "This is for you, ma'am. He's 6 weeks old, completely housebroken." The young puppy began to wiggle in happiness at being released from this box. And she asked this question, "Who sent this to me?" The young man, he set the animal down and handed her an envelope. And here's what he said. He said, "Ma'am, it's all explained in this envelope. This dog was purchased last July while its mother was still pregnant. It was meant to be a Christmas gift to you." The young man then handed her a book. In desperation, she asked again, "Who sent me this puppy?" And as the young man turned to leave, he said, "Your husband. Merry Christmas." While she gets this letter, she opens up this letter that her husband had written before he had passed. He'd written this letter, I think it was 3 weeks before he died. And he left this letter with the kennel owners to be delivered with the puppy as his last Christmas gift to his wife. The letter was full of love and encouragement and admonishments to be strong. He vowed that he was waiting for the day when she would join him in heaven, and that he had sent her this young animal to keep her company until then. You can imagine she's wiping away the tears. She puts the letter down, and then remembering the puppy at her feet, she picked up that golden lab and held it close to her neck. And she looked out that window at the lights that outlined the neighbor's house, and she heard from the radio in her kitchen the strains of that song, "Joy to the World, the Lord is Come." And suddenly Stella felt the most amazing sensation of peace washing over her. And her heart felt a joy and a wonder greater than any grief or loneliness that she was experiencing. She spoke to that dog. She said, "Little fella," she said, "it's just you and me. But you know what?" she said, "There's a box down in that basement I bet you'd like. It's got a little Christmas tree in it, some decorations and some lights that are going to impress you. And there's a manger scene down there. How about let's go get it?" And that's exactly what that lady did. They went down that basement, got that box out, put up those trees and the lights and the decorations. What a gift that her husband had given to her. I just want you to know that some of you listening to this are going through a very, very difficult time. If you're not, you know someone who is. And we all go through times where we think that where is God? And we feel lonely. And we feel like nobody cares. But God in heaven, oh my. It might not always be a puppy, but God has a way of sending a signal of light to remind us that life is stronger than death. Light is more powerful than darkness. God is far more powerful than Satan. Good will overcome evil. And the people walking in darkness have seen a great light. The prophet said, "On those living in the land of the shadow of death, a light had dawned." His name is Jesus. And I just want to encourage you with this story today to know that there's a God in heaven who cares for you to the degree that he sent Jesus, his one and only Son, to die on that cross. Even in your depression and in your transgressions, God loved you so much that he sent Jesus to die on that cross for you and for me. And if you believe in him, if you believe in Jesus, you shall not perish, but you shall have the gift of everlasting life. Don't ever forget that Jesus is the resurrection and the life. Everything in life that causes you pain, everything in life that causes you despair, you need to know that Jesus conquered that grave. And you just need to look to him, put your faith in him, put your trust in him, and he will see you through any situation. And one day, when this life is over, we will all, because of what Jesus did on that cross and our faith and belief in him, we shall have everlasting life. I want to thank you for joining us today on Godly Goosebumps, this podcast. make sure you hit the subscribe button. And at least if you're watching this on social media site, make sure you hit the share button, and let's get this story and get this podcast into as many people's hearts and lives that we possibly can. God bless you. Thank you. And we'll catch you on another episode of Godly Goosebumps.